Recent studies show a growing number of Americans are feeling burnt out in their careers. How can you recognize the signs and find a job that works for you? Here's more as we advocate for you. Feeling burnt out at work, unmotivated, unfulfilled, and wondering why?
I think honestly, a lot of people don't really know why. They really kind of struggle with the what is it about this job I don't love? And I think a lot of people focus on structural things like where they work, working from home. They focus on compensation. They focus on job title. But the real reasons tend to be much deeper and they're a lot more existential. Things like falling out of love with your job, no longer recognizing the job that you have, or being in love with a career that doesn't love you back in the ways that you value. And so I think for a lot of us kind of grappling with those things, we have to dig pretty deep to actually get to the why, and it's often not what we expect it to be.
Dr. Tessa West is a professor of psychology at New York University and author of the book Job Therapy. She says falling out of love with a job is a lot like falling out of love with a partner.
I teach a close relationships course, and so I teach students how to go about, developing a romantic relationship with someone, how to have clear communication during the dating stage. And I think what we've seen over time is this kind of convergence in the way people talk about dissatisfaction in their romantic lives. Things like doing invisible labor that your partner doesn't appreciate, or drifting apart from someone who you no longer recognize. These things happen to us at work too, where the way people talk about their career, they talk about it using the same language that they use to talk about unhappiness in their romantic lives.
How do you know when it's officially time to move on? Are there any telltale signs?
Yeah, so I'd say the first step you want to do when you start having these kind of mixed feelings is to document them and to look for some stability in those feelings. The process of falling out of love with a job or a career can be really complex, and the first stage is often a little bit surprising for people. I think most of us expect disengagement, burnout, quiet quitting, but often those early signs are the opposite. You go all in at work. You want to prove to yourself that you've done everything you can to actually make it happen. The problem is we often see ourselves doing these things and we read too much into those signs. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm working extra hours, I'm taking on extra tasks. That must mean I actually do really love this job. And in fact, often the opposite is true. Those are the early warning signs that you're actually starting to be dissatisfied. And then looking for consistency and dissatisfaction over time is a really important first step for people. What I recommend you do is you do that thing that most of us hate doing, networking. But the way that I recommend you do it is a little bit different than I think most of us are worried about. A lot of us think we have to come across as really impressive. We have to impression manage. We have to talk about ourselves a lot during these conversations. And in fact, I actually recommend you do the opposite when you're starting to discover new careers. Reach out to people, have 15-minute conversations where the primary goal is just to learn about them. And it turns out people love to talk about themselves. So asking them about their own career and about how they got there tends to be a way less stressful experience than feeling like you have to actually kind of put your best foot forward.
How can you make a good first impression?
I think a lot of us go into interviews and think, I'm going to smile, I'm going to nod, I'm going to say yes to everything they're going to ask me to potentially do. Ironically, hirers are actually looking for people who show restraint, who do the opposite, who actually demonstrate that they have priorities of roles and that they are comfortable saying no to things. They also like people who are willing to ask the tough questions. Questions like, what does it look like to fail at this job? Tell me about the last person who took on this role and didn't succeed and why you think that's the case. Questions like, if I was to get promoted out of this job, do you have a succession plan in place? Or, are the skills I need right now the same as the skills that I'm going to need tomorrow or the next day? Don't pretend like you have skills that you don't. Don't do the fake it till you make it thing. And also, when you talk about why you didn't do well in your last job, don't feel like you have to sugarcoat everything that you maybe misstepped or did wrong. A lot of us feel like we can't show weakness in a job interview, but interviewers are actually looking for you to admit you made a mistake, maybe that you took on a role you didn't have the expertise for, that you're managing too many people and you weren't used to a team that size. Admit that those things have happened and that you learned from it and what you want to do again in the future.
Head to TessaWestAuthor.com for more information about Tessa, her books, and career insights.